we've been under this illusion for quite some time that there is a difference between liberal Zionism and conservative Zionism, and really they're one and the same. And so what you're going to now see, which is going to become a lot more common as we go forward, because everybody knows. And we're going to have a fun segment at the end of the show tonight that I just came across, assuming we could get it in higher quality, of Mark Levin having another mental breakdown about the fact that people don't love Israel anymore. And he doesn't know what to do with himself. He actually went on kind of like a psychotic break in the process. So what they're going to attempt to do, especially the liberal Zios, led by the likes of, believe it or not, Bernie Sanders, and we're not letting up on that, that if we just get rid of Netanyahu Milikowski, that Israel will all of a sudden become a nation in which people will gleefully accept again. That this is
not so.
Wait,
so where are you going to start? So we're going to go in the order we talked about, right?
The Knesset. So there was a blow up at the Knesset earlier today, and it is pretty obvious that they are now attempting, I don't know if it's a coup, but whatever they are attempting to do, the citizens of Palestine, calling it Israel, have decided in Tel Aviv that they don't want to deal with this anymore because they realize that the walls are closing in and they're looking for a scapegoat. They're looking for an off-ramp. So naturally, they're going to blame Netanyahu. And here's what happened at the Knesset earlier today.
אני מאשימה אותך, בנימין נתניהו. מאשימה אותך בטבח ה-7 באוקטובר. האסון הגדול ביותר שידעה המדינה קרה במשמרתך. גם אם אתה ישן עם מצפון.
Just look at how he sits there with his...
He couldn't care less. He could not care less what she's saying. Also, if their sort of legislation system is pretty similar to ours in that there's a lot of theater involved. So whether or not this woman, and I do not know who this is legitimate resistance or controlled opposition, or it's all theater, I don't know. So for all we know, this is the same type of thing that we get with like Nancy Pelosi ripping up the paper, ripping up the speech. It's performative, but we don't know if this is a real opposition or not. That's the truth. We don't know.
I would like to think, and again, I can't make any assumptions. The lady's name is Naama Lazimi.
Okay.
Naama Lazimi is the
lady. Where has she been for the past 2 years is my question.
Of course. Like I said.
So that's my point. Where has she been?
Yeah, and that's exactly why I believe that the reason this is becoming an issue now, where they're trying to pin it on him, is because they know that the walls are closing in. They know that people do not want to deal with them anymore. And above everything else, much as the story we brought to you guys a couple of weeks ago about how Turkey basically bankrupted Israel's entire steel industry, this is probably becoming a really serious economic situation for millions of people. And they don't know what the hell to do. They're basically on a sinking ship, but they have nowhere to go because no one wants them, aside from the very wealthy, who are figuring out a way to get to either Cyprus or to Argentina.
Well, and I think that it's even more than that, in that these people realize that this is this could be the end of their state. Now, I am of the belief that it is the end of their state, that they're just like the Walking Dead. But these people are now realizing that they're going to lose their state.
Yeah.
I think that it isn't, yes, it's the economy, but the economy and these things have been very bad for the past 2 years, pretty consistently. But so they somehow are starting to sense that this is wrapping up and it's not going to end well for the existence of their state. That's what I think. I
think you're right. And it's going to get, look, that these are going to be regular occurrences. But remember, when you're a total psychopath like Netanyahu Milikowski is, that's why he sits there with his arm draped over a chair.
Oh, he doesn't give a shit.
This ain't no thing. This ain't no thing. That's how he sees it, until eventually it is. Defiance or pride is greatest before the fall. So we'll see.
נקי, לא נשכח לך, נזעק את ההפקרה, תקום ועדת חקירה ממלכתית. אני מאשימה אותך, בנימין נתניהו, במימון החמאס, בבניית הטרור, ועצימת העיניים האיום הקיומי עלינו, בהפקרת ביטחון המדינה כמדיניות. ביטחון הוא לא אינסטרומנט פוליטי, שמעת? הוא מעל הכל. אני מאשימה אותך, נתניהו, הפכת את הציבור העובד והמשרת לחמורו של משיח. יצרת את ברית ההשתמטות והסיפוח. גבורת הלוחמים נעלמה מעיניך, אבל לא מעינינו.
There is nothing brave whatsoever about what the IDF has done.
Nothing.
They are mass murderers
Oh, yes.
of children.
Yeah. They're fighting unarmed people. There is absolutely nothing remotely brave about that. It seems to me that the majority of problems that they have is running over their own incendiary devices, because they're so proud about fighting an unarmed population of children.
The despicable nature of these people thinking that I'm going to grandstand in front of the Knesset, but then I'm going to slip in our brave soldiers who murdered and pillaged and raped, actually raped women and children and men too. Hey, equal opportunist. You know what I'm saying? Grape. I said grape with a G. I didn't actually say the R word. Just remember, in case YouTube's listening.
But that's what I'm saying. So the fact that she's also fitting in these sort of nationalistic talking points, it shows that she was sent forward from whatever party, group, faction, sect she represents to send out the message to the world that we see that Benjamin Netanyahu is a problem, but we're still a great country. And that's the message. These are all her little talking points to get in, because they really do see that the rest of the nations of the world are not having it with them.
אני מאשימה אותך, נתניהו. השחיתות האישית שלך הפכה למכת מדינה. כל מושחת הופך שותף. ככל שיש לך תיק יותר גדול על מישהו, הוא יותר נוח לך. משפט של איש אחד לקח מדינה שלמה כבת ערובה. אני מאשימה אותך, נתניהו, כי שכחת מה זה להיות יהודי. טראמפ החזיר חטופים במקומך, בזמן שאתה, בלי חשומה, התעסקת בלרתום אותו לחנינה. עשרות חטופים נרצחו ונהרגו בשבי, כשאתה לא קיימת את מצוות פדיון שבויים, חסר מצפון ובלי אלוהים.
Yeah, the reason he's like this is because, again, I think it's just, this is the performance. Maybe that's why he's been hanging out with what's his name? Milei in Argentina. It's like, maybe he's already ready to jump out of his golden parachute. This is just sort of the finale that they're put together for our viewing pleasure.
And remember, the biggest reason why guys like him and guys like Milei get these golden parachutes isn't because they destroy their own countries. They do, but they make very few important people even more rich. And in the end, that's really what matters.
Well, so this is sort of like, he knows this is the plan. That's how it almost, this is theater.
Somebody's got to wipe that smirk off of his effing face already.
אני מאשימה אותך, נתניהו, הגזענות תמיד שירתה אותך. קראת אותנו מבפנים. הפכת חצי עם לאויב. אז נתניהו, אני המרוקאית, המסורתית ממגדל העמק אומרת לך, אנחנו נשבור את החומות שבנית, אנחנו ננקה את הרעל ששפכת פה 30 שנה, אנחנו נחזור להיות חברה מאוחדת. אני מאשימה אותך, נתניהו, רוצחים פה אזרחים כאילו הם אבק אדם, משילות עלק. כשהליכוד מתנהל כמו ארגון פשע, ארגוני הפשיעה מרימים ראש. אני מאשימה אותך, נתניהו, כן, בהקרבת החיים עצמם. אנשים גמורים תחת המציאות הכלכלית. לא יודעים איך להיכנס לסופר ולשלם חשבונות. הכל פה הפך יקר. רק החיים תחתיך הפכו לזולים עד כאב.
Okay, so I also think it's interesting the point. I think it's done. Is it done?
Yes. Well, this one's done.
Okay. So I think...
Well, one thing I do want to point out, all those tears that they supposedly are shedding, not once did they mention the Palestinian people. Not once.
No, she's sitting there and talking about how they need to go back to the glory of 30 years ago when they were all united. And by they being all united, she means Jewish Israelis. That's what she means by being all united. Like nothing that she said in any way is regarding unity in terms of the Palestinians. Again, she didn't mention them. So this reeks of staged opposition to me. This reeks of political theater, and his attitude just sitting there just sort of, proves that to me.
Yeah. And it really, it's rich, very rich coming from them, because in the end, there is not going to be an off-ramp for these people.
No.
As much as they think they're going to get one. And as I said, there were two key points in that video that truly stood out. The first one is no condemnation whatsoever of the IDF. In fact, it was, these are heroes. The IDF are heroes. That's what this shit-lib Zio had to say at the Knesset. And then,
well, wait a second. But I do think what she was sort of intimating there is that how dare he use these heroes for this, that, like, it's almost like they're only bad because of him. Otherwise, that's the premise. That's like what I was getting from it.
Yeah. And that, of course, to me, says it all. In the end, they're trying to save their own necks. They do not have any remorse or any sympathy for what really is going on, not what did go on, what is still going on. The genocide has not ended. It is still going. New form of cluster bombs, as I pointed out on Saturday. This is only going to get worse, but I do kind of like watching them spiral completely out of control.
Yeah. So speaking about what she's saying about, we're going to go back without you here, we're going to go back to where we were all unified and together like 30 years ago. So I think that's the good segue into the next sort of part of this story, which is they're going to try to convince the world that this is a one-off. This is just Netanyahu and the Likud, and they're the ones that just took this to, and that's just not the case. So Miko Peled, do you want to introduce where this goes from here?
I want you to, if you could, explain to the audience why Bernie Sanders' version of liberal Zionism may not be as evil incarnate as, Netanyahu's form of Zionism, but it's still evil in its own way because of this, equating this idea that if we simply got rid of Milikowski, that we can somehow make Israel great again.
Right. Because Israel, and this is something that I see is very parallel to MAGA. Israel was never great. That's the problem. So the problem with the idea of what I guess we are referring to as liberal Zionism is this idea of it's the two-state solution. When I think of liberal Zionism, I think of the people that they believe the Palestinians deserve a state, but they still believe that the Jewish people are entitled to an ethno-state, which by definition is what Zionism is. And that cannot exist without an ethnic cleansing. Ethnic state means you need to have an ethnic cleanse. That's just how this works. So you cannot say, I believe in having a Jewish state and simultaneously care about universal human rights. Those two things are mutually exclusive. So that's the problem, that the liberal Zionism that's not a thing. The entire premise of Zionism is white supremacy and oppression. It's the entire premise of it. That's how it was started. The people who founded it knew that. They spoke about it. Golda Meir knew that they would have to ethnically cleanse, and that was acceptable to them. So no, you cannot have a Jewish state. That cannot exist.